so excited because the past month and a half, the Lord's been speaking to me about patterns. Say patterns. Touch your neighbor, say patterns. And 2 weeks ago, I preached a message. You guys remember the name of that sermon? 2 weeks ago, I preached a message titled, I Should Have Seen the Warning Signs, right? And I preached about Delilah. You guys remember Delilah? Yeah, she was bad news. Bad news for Samson. And I thought about this. When I preached this message, the day before, I saw this meme on Instagram, and it was this little kid leaning up against the wall, and he had like an ice cream cone in his hand, and there was this girl walking by, and he was looking at her like this, and he said, "Me when I see something that's no good for me." Have you guys seen that? No? Okay. Great. Anticlimactic. Yeah. Memes are not dead, my friend. Memes are life. You're going to find memes in history books. Yeah. Political cartoons of today. Let's go. Man, you guys are like solemn today. Give me a what? Give me a what? All right, that's a little bit better. Okay, cool. So I preached a message titled, I Should Have Seen the Warning Signs. We're in a series titled Patterns, because we're looking at the patterns of the Bible. We're discovering the patterns within ourselves, and we're trying to identify the patterns in other people, and we're trying to figure out what pattern God has for us. Show me your patterns, I'll show you your future. That's my message title for tonight. Show me your patterns, I'll show you your future. Okay. We're going to be looking at tonight the patterns of Samson. Last week we looked at the patterns of Delilah. Her patterns were seduction, trap, and guilt. Seduction, trap, guilt. Seduction, trap, guilt. Constantly seducing Samson, constantly trapping him, and making him feel guilty for lying to her. So that was her pattern, and tonight we're going to be discovering the pattern of Samson that actually led him to that point. Touch your neighbor, say, I'm ready. All right. So we're going to be reading in Judges chapter 13. I'm going to start right at the beginning of this chapter. This is the beginning of Samson's life in chapter 13. And I just want to hit it right on Judges 13, verse 1. Judges 13, verse 1 says, Again, say again. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered, say delivered. Delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. Again. Say again. Say it again. Say again. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. This is so significant because right off the bat, the first word says everything. The word again. That means that, again, they did evil in the eyes of the Lord, implying the fact that they have had a pattern of doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. Say pattern. Say pattern. Come on, wake up.
Pattern.
They had a pattern of doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered. That's the other key word. Deliver. Say deliver. Delivered them into the hands of the enemy. And that's significant right there. Delivered. This means that the Lord gave them over to the Philistines, sent them and ordered them to be ruled under the Philistines. Now this is powerful. I want you to know something, and you can write this down in your notes. You are in an envelope, okay? And your mailing address is your destiny. Okay, you're in this envelope, okay? God has wrapped you up like a little gift in an envelope of purpose, and He has mailed you to a destination. But can I tell you that your pattern determines your mailing address? Your pattern determines your mailing address. What does that mean? It says that, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them, like mail, right? Delivered them to the hands of the Philistines. And so here's the point in that, is that eventually, if your sin becomes a pattern, God will deliver you into a place where your pattern, where your sin becomes comfortable. The moment when you begin to get comfortable in your sin, you know you're in a bad place. You know you're actually in a dangerous place. And it's kind of, it doesn't really make sense because like, well, I finally got comfortable with it. That's a dangerous place to be. See, the Israelites worshipped idols, right? And so what did God do? He delivered them to a people who also worshipped idols. He made their sin suddenly comfortable. He said, okay, if that's where the desire of your heart is, I will let you go. I will give you over to the desires of your heart. And if you don't believe me that the Lord will give you over to the desires of your heart, even if they're bad, I'll prove it to you right now. Let's go to Romans chapter 1, verse 24. And you don't have to read the whole verse. I'll read it for you. It says, therefore, God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts. Verse 25 says, they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator. Verse 26 says, because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. That's twice now. We've heard the scripture say that God gave them over to the desires of their heart. God gave them over to the shameful lusts. And it says it a third time. It says in verse 28, furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, or a wicked mind. That's 3 times that Scripture says the phrase, God gave them over. Now, when you see something repeating itself, what do you call that? A pattern. Say pattern. Patterns are significant in the Bible. When you see something repeating itself, you need to take notice of it. It says God gave them over to their depraved mind, or their wicked mind, because of the desires of their heart, the repetitive desires of their heart. God gave them over. And this is kind of a scary reality, that as you continue in your sin and you allow it to become a pattern, eventually, it's scary to think about the fact that eventually God will say, okay, if that is the desire of your heart, I will hand you over to it. That is a scary place to be. And you don't ever want to be there. But He will send you there. And some of you may have been there before. Maybe all of a sudden, you've been surrounded by friends out of nowhere who all of a sudden don't make you feel so bad about your sin. Maybe now you've been surrounded by people who, you used to not cuss because your friends didn't like you cussing, but then you started doing it so much it became a habit that all of a sudden you've attracted friends now who are okay with you cussing. And not only that, it's encouraged. See, that was the thing with the Israelites and the Philistines. The Philistines worshipped idols, so God, and the Israelites were worshiping idols, so God handed them over to a place where their sin would become comfortable. And again, that's a scary place to be. Some of your friends may be spiritual Philistines. I'll leave that right there, and we'll move on forward. So here's point number 1. And you can write this down if you're taking notes. Okay. Point number 1. Oh, sweet. If your sin becomes a pattern, God will eventually give you over to your desires. Write that down. God will eventually give you over to your desires. Now, we're looking tonight at the patterns of Samson. And I'm not going to read the whole story of Samson because it's about 3 chapters long, and you're going to fall asleep on me really quick. But here's what I'm going to do. I am going to read Judges chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. It says, Samson went down to Timnah. And remember, this is before he's ever met Delilah. He never met Delilah yet. Okay? It says, Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman and Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. Kind of a bratty move. Mom, Dad, go get my wife, right? His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among our people, us Israelites? Isn't there an acceptable woman here? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines, the idolaters, to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. Some of us have probably said that line. Oh, she's the one. Oh, he's the one. She's the right one for me. And how wrong we often are. And then going to, hold on, let me figure out where I'm at. So this is the first thing we notice about Samson, right? He's attracted to a Philistine woman. It doesn't even mention her name, so she's not even important, right? It doesn't even mention her name. But he's attracted to a Philistine woman, and it's not love. It says he sees her and he wants her. That's called infatuation. That's called lust. That's not love. Okay? And so Samson has created, he's taken his first step in his pattern, which is lust. Say lust.
Lust.
Then Judges chapter 14, verses 5 through 9. If you'll go there. Judges chapter 14, verses 5 through 9. It says, Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. He tears up a lion with his bare hands. Verse 8, it says, sometime later, when he went back to marry this Philistine woman, he turned aside to look at the lion carcass that he left there. And when he saw it, he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out the honey with his hands and ate as he went along. Now this is really important. This is really significant. Because if you guys remember 2 weeks ago, I talked about the fact that Samson was a Nazarite. You guys remember that? Samson is a Nazarite. What does that mean? That means that from the womb, his parents dedicated him to God. And he took a vow that said, I will never cut my hair. I will never touch anything dead. And I will never eat anything or drink anything from the vine. Meaning no alcohol, no grapes, nothing. That's the Nazarite vow. Never to cut your hair. Never to touch anything dead. And never to eat or drink anything from the grapevine or the vine. Okay? Now, it's such a serious vow, and they hold it so high, that here's an example of what Samson cannot do. Samson, as a Nazarite, if his father were to die, he is not even allowed to enter the room where his father lays dead. Because as a Nazarite, he is set apart and dedicated to God. He's not allowed to touch anything dead. It was ceremonially unclean to even enter the room where a dead relative would lay. That's how serious that vow is. So here's the significance of it. As Samson is walking down to Timnah to marry this woman, a lion comes at him. He rips it in half and moves on. Later, as he's coming back by this lion carcass, he sees a swarm of bees making honey inside of the lion carcass. And he reaches down and scoops out the honey from the dead lion carcass. And he eats it as he goes. Why is this significant? Because the lion's dead. See, here's the key. Samson showed early signs that he was willing to reach into dead places for sweet things. He showed early signs that he was willing to compromise his vows for something that looked really good. That was another example of he was experiencing lust. Now you have to understand, when we say the word lust, we often think of sex, right? We think of attraction. Oh, lust, right? It's not that's not what lust is. That falls under the category of lust, okay? But you can have a lust for money. You can have a lust for fame, a lust for pride, for acknowledgement or validation. You can have a lust for many things. Okay? Lust is when you're willing to compromise your values, your morals, just to get something that is sweet. So Samson showed early signs. Say warning sign. He showed early signs that he was willing to reach into dead places for something sweet. Let me make sure we're together, Scotty. Now in Judges chapter 15, verse 9 through 13, or 12 through 13, that's perfect. That's perfect right there. They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." And agreed, they said, "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. So here Samson has been captured by his own people. Why? I'll give you a little backstory. Samson is kind of reckless. Samson in this story is very reckless. He has this pattern of lust, and his lust gets him into a lot of trouble. He doesn't just have a lust for women. He has a lust for power. He has a lust for glory. He has a lust for recognition, for pride. And it gets him in a lot of trouble because when someone does something wrong to him, when they hurt him, he just kills a bunch of people. And so he's made the Philistines angry. And now the Philistines want to attack Israel. And so what does Israel do? They say, "Samson, you've gotten us in all of this trouble because of your lust for power, your lust for women, your terrible decisions. You've gotten us in all this trouble. We're going to hand you over to the Philistines." And so he says, "All right, just don't kill me. You can hand me over." And so here Samson is with his hands behind his back. He's in captivity. So the pattern of Samson is lust, captivity, lust, captivity, lust, captivity. What's the name of my message? Show me your pattern. I'll show you your future. Show me your pattern, and I will show you your future. That's a powerful statement. Because that means that I can know you for just a little while. And I can predict what your life is going to turn out to be 10 years from now. I may not be so accurate. I may not be right on the dot. And things can change. But based upon the pattern that you're in right now, if something doesn't break, your pattern is going to lead you to a place of destruction. If it's leading you into destruction now on a small scale, over time, things begin to grow. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So Samson has this pattern of lust and captivity over and over and over again. And it continues through Judges 15 and 16. Samson, at one point, when he's been captured by the Philistines, they have him. It says that he breaks the ropes. And there's 1,000 Philistines around him. And it says, check this out, it says he picks up a fresh, dead donkey jawbone. There he goes again. Breaking his vows, touching something dead. Why? Well, why does he need that? It says that the Spirit of the Lord came on him and gave him strength. It says God, the Spirit of God gave him strength. Yet he reached down and grabbed a dead donkey bone. He doesn't need that. It says he killed 1,000 men with this donkey bone. He could have done it without it. He had the Spirit of God on him. But why? Why would he pick up the jawbone? Because he was willing to reach into dead places for something sweet. What was the something sweet in this case? It was glory. Look at what he says here. It's so prideful. He sings a song. After striking 1,000 men with this donkey bone, it says, "With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." He makes this song. First of all, he says, "I have killed 1,000 men." But it said the Spirit of God gave him strength. So there he is, taking credit for what God did. He took a jawbone. He reached into a dead place for something sweet. So we see this pattern continuing over and over again. And then if you go into chapter 16, verse 1, right in verse 1, it says, look at this. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. There he goes again. Lust. He's got this pattern of lust and captivity, and then not short after that, he meets Delilah. And it says sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, or the valley of emptiness, whose name was Delilah. Samson's pattern is lust, captivity, lust, captivity. Samson continued on this pattern. And here's point number 2. You can put this one up. Little slip-ups can lead to massive downfalls. Little slip-ups can lead to massive downfalls. Think about it this way. When you see a drug addict, a homeless man who is a drug addict, not all homeless people are drug addicts, but if you see a homeless man who is a drug addict on the side of the road, and all he can think about, he doesn't even want your money for food, he wants your money for drugs. If you were to go buy him a meal, he doesn't want that. He wants cash so he can go buy his next fix. See, when a homeless man is sitting on the side of the road and he's a drug addict, here's the truth. 10 years prior to that, he wasn't sitting at home thinking, one day I'm going to be a drug addict. That wasn't what he was thinking. He wasn't thinking like that. That wasn't his life plan. But his pattern led him to this place. See, he made decisions early in life. It was a pattern of destruction. And as time went on, this pattern that started out as seemingly harmless, this pattern grew and led him to a deadly place. And this is exactly what happened to Samson. See, you may not think it was a big deal. Oh, what's the big deal? Yeah, okay, he grabbed some honey out of a lion carcass. We get it, Pastor Christian. It's kind of nasty. I wouldn't do that. That's pretty gross. But what's really the big deal? The big deal is that it shows his pattern on a small scale. But if you continue on a pattern, our flesh continues to push the limits of what we can do, what we can get. And so in that moment, it was honey from a lion carcass. But years later, it was a Philistine woman who would lie and deceive him and capture him and lead him to death. Patterns have a way of growing. So that point number 2 is little slip-ups can lead to massive downfalls. And I'm not trying to be all harsh and grim tonight. I want you to take this message and apply it to your life. And think about this. Think about the little decisions you make. The little white lies. The little yeses. Someone offers you something and you say yes and you justify it and you say, it's not a big deal. It's not gonna. What's the harm? What's the harm? What's it really going to hurt? How's it really going to hurt me? It's the little yeses. It's the little things, the little actions, the little things that we do that reveal our pattern. And if you show me your pattern now, I will show you your future then. And I know this sounds kind of harsh. I'm not trying to scare you guys. But this is a powerful principle, a powerful concept. If you can grab this, you'll hold on to it for the rest of your life. This will protect you and keep you from terrible decisions down the road. So here Samson has this pattern of lust and captivity. He's continuously lusting, has greed, going after things that he shouldn't want, reaching into dead places that he shouldn't touch, to grab something sweet that was never made for him. He's got this pattern, and it leads him to captivity. And then in Judges chapter 16, verse 20, Samson has a reality check. Samson, when he was a little boy, he didn't say, oh, one day I want to be captured by a Philistine woman, and I want my hair cut, and I want to lose all my strength, and I want them to gouge my eyes out. He didn't say that when he was a little boy. His decisions led him there. Judges chapter 16, verses 20 is Samson's wake-up call. It says, then she called, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he awoke from his sleep and he thought, oh, I'll just go out as before and shake myself free. But the scariest verse of the Bible right here says, but he did not know the Lord had left him. You can translate that over and say, but he did not know that the Lord gave him over to his own desires. He did not know that the little decisions he has made created a pattern that the Lord gave him over to. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged his eyes and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They sent him to grinding grain in the prison. There's Samson's reality call, his wake-up call. He's been captured. A pattern that started out as harmless led him to a deadly place, a place of no return. And that's the scary part about patterns, is that patterns lead to a place of no return. And so I hope as you're sitting here kind of quiet, I really hope that the Holy Spirit is working in you right now and showing you some things about yourself and bringing to light some things in your mind where you're saying, you know what, I have been doing this quite often. You know what, I didn't used to do it. Then I did it once. Then I would just do it every couple of months. And lately I've been doing it every weekend. I hope you're seeing these things in yourself, these patterns. Because the scary thing is that God will eventually give you over to the desires of your heart. The little slip-ups will lead to massive downfalls. And this is the last part. So as we look at the pattern of Samson, this lust and captivity, it's pretty messy. It's a messy story. When you read the story of Samson, he's a so-called man of God, a prophet. But when you read what he does and how he operates in his life, you really look at him and you're like, wow, this is really not a good guy. And wow, he's really not that smart. You'd think he'd caught the warning signs of Delilah. So what's the big deal about Samson? How has he lived this long? Being so lustful, being a bad person, being so destructive. How has he lived this long? And here's the catch, is that there is a greater pattern at work. There is a greater pattern at work. A pattern that is greater than the pattern of Samson. There is a greater pattern at work. Say pattern. And we're going to look at this pattern right now. Judges chapter 14, verse 6. You're right there with me, Scott. The Spirit of the Lord. And worship team, y'all can come right now if you can. Chapter 14, verse 6 says, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. Judges chapter 14, verses 19. I hope you're catching up on this pattern. 14, verse 19 says, you with me, Scott? Yeah. Oh, yeah, there you are. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 of their men. I hope you're seeing a pattern. Judges chapter 15, verses 14. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him shouting. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully, say powerfully, say powerfully, upon him. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. It says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Judges chapter 15, verses 19. Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. And when Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. He opened up a hollow place in the ground, and he sprung forth water, and Samson drank, and his strength returned. Judges chapter 16, verses 28 through 30. God strengthened Samson one last time. This is when he's been captured. His eyes have been gouged out. He's bound. His hair has been cut. He has no more strength. And he prays to God. It says, then Samson prayed to the Lord. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more. And let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines. Here's point number 3. Your pattern of sin is no match for God's pattern of grace. Come on. Your pattern of sin is no match for God's pattern of grace. Samson had this continuous pattern of lust, destruction, and captivity. Lust, destruction, and captivity. He continued on this pattern until it led him to a place of no return, where his hair had been cut, and he had been bound, and his eyes had been gouged out, and he had no more strength. But it says, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he pushed the pillars apart and killed all of the Philistines, and he with them. The pattern of your sin is no match for the pattern of God's grace. I've been talking about patterns here. See, this is good news. You ought to be shouting right now, honestly, because you got to think about this. I've been talking about sin. I've been talking about lust, captivity, and how if you continue on these patterns, they will eventually lead you to a place of no return, of destruction. And you need to heed that warning. You need to take that in and say, okay, you know what? I don't want to be in destruction one day. I don't want to end up in Samson with my eyes gouged out, bound in captivity, lost in an addiction that I can't break. I don't want to be in that place. So take heed of that warning. But here's the good news. Here's the gospel. The gospel of this all is that no matter how far down your pattern that you have gone, there is a greater pattern at work. The pattern of God's hand in your life. The pattern of your sin is no match for the pattern of God's grace. There is no sin that His blood cannot cover, that He cannot forgive. There is no amount of times that you can sin that His blood cannot forgive. He washed it clean and threw your sins into the sea of forgetfulness. If you'll just put your faith in Jesus Christ, you will be saved. See, we all have patterns. We all have patterns of destruction. Things that seem harmless now, but one day if we continue down that pattern, will one day lead us into destruction. We all face sin. All of us. But if you put your faith in Jesus, if you put your faith in the one who died for our sins, we realize there is a greater pattern at work. And I'll say it again, your pattern of sin is no match for God's pattern of grace. So I'm going to thank God for that. That's the least we can do. I'm going to read some verses to you right now. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 7. It says, but to each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 through 9 says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. It is the gift of God, not by our own works, so that no one can brag. And in Romans 5:20 it says, where sin abounded, grace abounded much more. There is no pattern of sin that can stand against the pattern of God's grace. And that is the good news. That is the gospel. And I'm going to bring it right back down to Samson. If you guys will stand with me, because we're about to get into some worship right now. Come on up to the front. We'll find a place somewhere in this room. It doesn't matter. called a foreshadow. Meaning when you see something on a small scale, you can predict that it's going to happen on a much larger scale. You follow me? The story of Samson has a pattern to it. And this is so cool. Because right here in Judges chapter 16, verses 28 through 30, I want you to read with me the prayer that Samson prays right here. Lord, help me in this moment as I deliver this gospel. 16, verse 28 through 30. Then Samson prayed to the Lord. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more. And let me with one blow, say one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my sake. This is a foreshadow of Jesus. With one final blow to demolish the enemy, he prays, Lord, just strengthen me one last time so that I can, with one blow, eliminate the enemy. And can I just tell you that that is exactly what Jesus did for you. That is exactly what Jesus did for you. With one final blow, with one final sacrifice, one final crucifixion, his blood was shed and your sins were forgiven forever. Every single last one of them, with one final blow. If you'll just put your faith in Jesus and say, God, I believe in you and I believe in your son Jesus, that he died on the cross for me, that my sins are forgiven because your blood was shed. Lord, cleanse me and wash me in your blood. Make me a new creation. Make me new and reverse the pattern of sin in my life and implement the pattern of grace that you have for me. Can I just tell you that you may be in a pattern of sin right now, but there is a pattern of grace that God has for you. If you'll just put your faith in Jesus Christ and trust that what he did on the cross was the final blow, the last sacrifice that never had to be taken for your sin. And I want to give an altar call right now. If you're in this place for a moment, and if you've done it before and you veered away from him, can I just tell you that there is forgiveness for you, and you can come back to the Father right here, right now, by coming to Jesus Christ. And so if you would like to give your life to Jesus for the first time, or the second, or the third, I'd like you to come forward right now, because there's someone who's going to pray for you. Let's sing and worship together.